Alpine Touch has been a staple of Montana for nearly 8 decades. Folks around the Treasure State have been putting Alpine Touch's world-famous all-purpose seasoning on their steaks and burgers for longer than most of us have been alive. The holidays are coming up. If you want to knock everyone's socks off, be sure to pick up some Alpine Touch Cold Smoke Rub for the best flavor for your Thanksgiving turkey or your Christmas prime rib. Alpine Touch comes in the mail right to your door. Just visit alpinetouch.com. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
Our Road to Frisco coverage continues here at Skyline Sports, and we're joined now by a guy who's been involved with Bobcat football on and off and also throughout his entire life. A guy that's from Bozeman, used to be the play-by-play guy there for Montana State University, now the play-by-play guy for the Minnesota Twins. Kris Atteberry joining us here on the Big Sky Breakdown. Kris, thanks for being here, man.
Hey, appreciate it. And I have to say thank you to you for this whole series of interviews and conversations leading up to Frisco. Has been amazing. I know it's something that my friends and I have been talking a lot about, and whether it was Kramer or Dakota or Singleton, like you've run the gamut, man. It's been awesome.
Well, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. It's funny. We have my whole stable of analyst guys at Skyline Sports too. Everybody from Michael Ryder to Sammy Akim, Ryan Tutel, my brother Brooks, Ty Gregorak, and I'm always using the numbers to inspire them. And hey, you had the best podcast this week. You had the best numbers. Well, Kramer blew us all the water. Kramer tripled up all of our numbers. So I was like, yeah, we all got second place this week, boys, because Kramer's about 3 times more than any of us.
He's the big human for a reason, man. He crushes it. He absolutely crushes it.
Well, and I got to see Sandy because Krames had never done a Zoom before, so she had to set it up for him.
I figured it was Courtney or Sandy, one of the two. There was no way that he was going to do it.
Yeah.
What's funny is I was worried about this. I only have one E.B. Craney award, and you've got like 100. So I was worried that I wouldn't be allowed in.
Oh man. Well, it's that's what I always tell our team at ESPN Radio. It's our standard. So better go get it done. For covering sports, it's all we got to prioritize winning. So tell people about just your sort of history, because you grew up in Bozeman, and that was during your childhood. A golden era for Montana State football. Sonny Holland is the coach, into then Sonny Lubick. And I mean, you're talking about 2 national championships in the span of less than a decade in 1976 and 1984. So give people sort of your up close and personal history.
Yeah, I was only 4 for the 76 crew, so I didn't really get that one, but I was the perfect age in 84. I was 12. I was a football mad 12-year-old. We were playing, Gallatin Empire Lions Club started the midget football program just before that for 5th and 6th graders. You could sell raffle tickets, play at halftime of a Bobcat game, which was amazing. We would have, even as a kid, soccer practices would be right adjacent to where the Bobcats would be practicing. We'd be yelling at Tony Bodie, trying to get his attention. Nice. In fact, Matt Lubick was on my 1st grade soccer team. And when it rained, we'd go to Sonny's house and hang out, just to get out of the rain because it was near the practice field. So I grew up a Bobcat, and when I was a little kid, we lived within walking distance of the stadium. We'd wait till the halftime and then walk up and go to the games. And then I moved out of town a little bit, went to a country school out at Anderson the rest of the time. But the Bobcats were the only show in town. I mean, to 84 was amazing. I was there for the Arkansas State game. I was there for the Rhode Island moment with Joe Roberts. Dean Alexander was, my idol and my mentor, and he was kind of the soundtrack to my entire childhood. So those guys were bigger than life. You'd run into Kelly Bradley at a movie, and he'd be wearing his championship ring. And you'd see Kirk Timmer and Kelly Angelos, who we all had a crush on, walking through the mall and be like, oh my God, that's Kirk Timmer. They were giants among us when you're 12 years old. I think that's the sweet spot for being a fan, is 12 years old. And so I was hooked. And obviously then there were some pretty rough times after that. But I never got away. So I went from being a childhood fan to working there, calling the games, which was amazing with Krames and ending the streak. And then now I'm a season ticket holder, even though I live in Minneapolis. So that was my full arc. The streak, we won on my 13th birthday. I was at a skating rink in Bozeman, and we didn't win again until I was 30. So that's pretty rough, right? Like, that's a pretty rough stretch to endure. Dean called that one, obviously beautifully, the great Lou Lade Adams call. I was in Seattle with Mick and the basketball team. We were playing the Huskies that night, and we were all going crazy. And then I got to call a couple of amazing ones myself. And So yeah, that's kind of my life as a Bobcat fan. And now Bobcats are what tie my childhood friends and I all together. My family moved from Bozeman, but my best friend's still there. Another one just moved back. My buddy in Seattle, me in Minneapolis, we share season tickets. We get back as often as we can, and the Bobcats are the tie that binds.
And that's what makes sports so great, right? And that's what makes sports in a small town so great too, which is it makes it all so much more fun and more rich to follow, certainly. The It's funny because we're long enough away from the streak now that there's a whole collection of Bobcat fans and followers that don't really understand like the cumulative effect that had on the mentality of football in the state of Montana, period,
Yeah.
on both sides of the rivalry. And I have a couple younger guys now that work for me at Skyline Sports, and the whole time that they've ever been covering this thing, it's been basically just dead even, right? I mean, I think the last 18 matchups, it's 9-9, so it's been pretty back and forth. The Cats have won 6 out of the last 8, so certainly gaining a little upper hand. But just sort of explain that to people that are unaware of it. You win the national championship in 1984, and then you don't beat the Grizzlies or make the playoffs for 16 years in a row. I think it really did have a profound sort of effect on the mindset of football fans across the entire state.
It was like a black cloud. And I was listening to when you talk with Crames and about the recruiting in the state and, how you get the best players in the state of Montana to play for you. Well, one way you don't do that is get beat 17 times in a row
right.
by the team on the other side of the hill, who, by the way, just built a new stadium and won the national championship, right? And so it's really hard to explain if you weren't part of it as a player, as a fan. It was a mentality. Like it was really, Cliff, God bless him, man. He did everything he could to fight through that. But until Lule to Adams, it was, the one I remember, I was living in Cody, Wyoming, doing radio straight out of college. And I was meeting my dad to go hunting out in Rapalje. And I was driving the back road there to Columbus. And I was listening to Dean, and, we were playing at home, and the Bobcats scored. I want to say it was Kinnaman getting into the corner of the end zone, and we were going to win. And I was honking the horn, on the road and screaming. And then the kickoff goes out of bounds. And then Ayat does his thing. And then was it Hepner? Chris with a K, Hepner, right? I remember because we had the same first name, Chris with a K. And I pulled over and threw up on the side of the road.
Oh, man.
That's how bad it was. I pulled over near Zorky and threw up on the side of the road when that happened. That's how deep that went. And so then when Trav hit Junior, it kind of just lifted a cloud and allowed things to become a little more normalized.
Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again.
Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any Town Pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.
Town Pump. Right down the road. Pump it up. Oh, yeah.
And then the way that that mentality has evolved for people of a certain age now, too, has been so fascinating because Jeff Choate was a great foundation builder and also a great hype man, a great ball coach in certain ways, but also had his limitations in certain ways, too. But because he beat the Grizz 4 years in a row, people want to build a statue for this guy in front of Bobcat Stadium.
Yeah, and I'll tell you,
and then when
like
he lost his first one, and then it was sort of like, oh my God, where did Choate go? And then we've seen what he's done since then, right?
And for me, Choate was the guy that kind of got me back. I was a Kramer guy, and I left for the Twins job right as that was falling apart in Bozeman, and it wasn't great. And the Ash years were kind of, for a lot of us, we kind of felt, I don't know, not connected. I was still linked through Bill Lamberty, Dan Davies, these great, I think, figures in that department that have been the backbone through so much in Bozeman. But from afar, it kind of felt distant. And then Waded shows up and Choate shows up, and he made you feel like you were a part of it again. Even just for a guy like me, just a teeny little part of it. I never put a helmet on, And then with Viggs, there's going to be 300 people there on Sunday, former players.
Right.
Like, he makes you feel every bit a part of it. He wrote me a handwritten letter. I didn't know Viggs from Adam. When we got hired, I guess through Bill, he found out he was a Twins fan. And I get this handwritten note saying, hey, I grew up in North Dakota. I'm coaching the Bobcats. I understand you were here. And now we like talk to each other, and he comes by when he's recruiting. I get him some tickets, and he makes everybody feel like you've got a part of it. And that's awesome. That's a program, not a team, is when you feel like that. And Brent Swaggart's local here in Minnesota. He'll be heading down with his daughter. So many guys. Nick Stevens used to come in from North Dakota, for a game, and we'd get together. And now we all share in it. We feel like we're all part of it, no matter how old you are or how young you are or how many times you beat the Grizz or lost to them. But I felt like Choate kind of ignited it. Vegan has been awesome with it, running with it. And at the top of the heap, the whole deal, like I think Waddell, right? If you want to say one hire that changed everything for Montana State football, it's the president of the school.
And there's a tease for upcoming. That's going to be our grand finale. I recorded with President Crisato on Tuesday, and we will drop that one for you on Sunday, right before the national championship game. And I can tell you this, there's so many Bobcat fans out there that are listening to this that are so unbelievably impassioned and love Montana State University and love the football team. There's no one that's a bigger Bobcat fan than Waddell Crisato. This interview is unbelievable.
She came in at a time when, let's be honest, like for our state, it was a weird time, especially in Bozeman. It's like outsiders are coming in and we're getting pushed out. And who are we? What are we as a town? Are we a playground for Hollywood superstars? Are we still a college town, cow town? And there was always gown in town conflict anyway, but the school is such a big part of Bozeman. And she, instead of running from it or building walls, she leaned into it and she optimized it. And the university across the board is just blossoming. Right. And is just ascendant in so many ways. And that's awesome, because that's also how Bozeman maintains, for me, as a Bozeman native, how Bozeman maintains its identity. It's tied to that school. You can be as Hollywood as you want on Main Street, where all of the McCracken's and the cowboy outlets and the diners and the Bungalow Drug, all those are gone. And it's all art galleries that I can't shop at. Okay. But the school's still there, and the school still holds so much of that for us, because it's still the heartbeat of the town. No matter what else is swirling around with the private jets, the school's the heartbeat for so many of us. And I like that. I can come back, pardon me, to Bozeman for a week and never see somebody that I know. But I go to a Bobcat game. I went to Cat Grizz with my daughter and my wife, and I walked the parking lot and I ran into 200 people that I knew. My youth soccer teammates, my high school basketball teammates, people I'd known since I was, in kindergarten. And that's awesome, because it's great to know that your Bozeman is still there. Because let's face it, as Montanans who leave, we cling to that identity. Like, it's a thing. And so then when your school and your football team in particular has success, well, you really cling to it, right? You wear the gear, you got the 406 on your hat, people are asking about it. And for those of us who are now, elsewhere, but will forever be, Bozeman people, Bobcat people, like, it's really cool.
It's so impressive to me too that Montana State has and I think football has a huge influence in this, but Montana State has established itself as sort of the it school in the state of Montana. And that was the University of Montana for 15, 20 years in the early part of this century, certainly, probably all through the 90s and into the early 2000s. But it's flipped, and football, a huge influence in that. But the reason it's so interesting to me is because Bozeman is a lot different than a lot of different places in Montana, but there's been so many kids from so many different towns that have wanted to be a part of this whole thing. And that's the other part they've done such a great job of is melding kids from rural places in this sort of now urbanized area in Bozeman. And you have to think the football team has a huge influence on that.
Huge, and it's always been, it's the type of programs, right? The way the schools are divvied up. So MSU's leaned into the business and the tech, but what's always been the core, right? The ag, the AGR house, a bunch of college kids throwing a rope at a head of horns and a bale of hay, since I was a little kid walking by. And so they haven't lost that. I grew up going to the rodeo every year, and I have as vivid of memories of watching Bud Monroe ride a horse as I do of watching Kelly Bradley throw a touchdown pass, or Jason Jackson and Travis Lulay. I can remember those just vividly. And the CNFR days, back before it moved out of town, those were foundational. And, yeah, the football team paves the way, and I think obviously facilities are a big part of that. The setting is electric. But a couple years ago, what was it? When Danny won the hoops and Trish won the hoops,
Yep.
and we had the football going, like everything's purring, right? Everything's purring, and academically, and the construction on campus, what the campus looks like. It's a beautiful thing. As much as we want our state to be like it was in 1965, a lot of people, like, you have to lean in and you become a ghost town. And I think growing in a positive way is something that Wadette has kind of paved the way for at the university. But yeah, it's amazing what a lift a football team can give to a community, right? And the other thing, and the school's always done this, and it hasn't always been successful, is you bring other people into your community too, right? Bozeman, when I grew up, lily white. And the only diversity you saw was people coming in to play at MSU. And I go back now with my daughter, and it's still pretty white, let's be honest, but it's a whole lot better and more diverse and better for that when I go back.
Yeah.
Big Sky Breakdown, proudly presented by the Bobcat Collective at Montana State. The Bobcat Collective is the NIL collective that serves Montana State University student-athletes. The collective has partnered with Montana State to connect fans, alumni, businesses, and local nonprofits with Montana State student-athletes. Opportunities through the collective allow student-athletes to earn compensation while serving the greater Montana State University community. Sign up now for memberships and enjoy automatic entry into raffles for free tickets while supporting the bright minds at Montana State. They have multiple different membership tiers, and you can also be a one-time supporter, and you can also business partner or corporate supporter. Visit bobcatcollective.com for more. Are you paying too much in taxes? Elevated Tax and Accounting is a firm that specializes in tax planning and strategy to minimize your tax bill. Elevated Tax consult with you on tax strategy throughout the year, so no more waiting until the end of the year and hoping for the best. As a business owner, you know your sole focus should be spent working on your business, not in it. Outsourcing gives you the time to concentrate on the core reasons you started your company, to create and innovate a top-tier product and generate profits. Elevated Tax and Accounting, elevating you and your business with a modern professional touch.
Yeah, definitely. It's a really good point. Kris Atteberry joining us here on the Big Sky Breakdown, SkylineSportsMT.com. Road to Frisco, probably presented in part by the Bobcat Collective. Bobcat Collective helping usher Montana State in the new age of college athletics. You want a free membership to the Bobcat Collective? Visit bobcatcollective.com/skyline. We'll get you a month for free so you can see what those guys are all about. They also have a whole bunch of gatherings going on down there in Frisco. They have some hot spots for you to gather with fellow Bobcat fans. So check out BobcatCollective.com. Back to sort of the way that the program has evolved in terms of the mentality of the whole thing. I do think too, when Kramer and those guys broke the streak, it was all about beating the Grizz, and that was the proper mindset to have at that exact moment. Because if you're beating the Grizz, you're beating the best team in the country. I mean, they had won the national championship the year before the streak ended, and perennially a Final Four team. But I do think that one other thing is that is still the most important game. The rivalry is still so important, but it's not become the only end-all, be-all. And Brett Vigen proved that in 2021 by losing the rivalry game in Missoula, but then going on a run all the way to Frisco. So I just wonder your perspective just on the cumulative mentality of the program now, because it's a distinct shift to go from wanting to beat the rival and wanting to win the Big Sky to absolutely, truly thinking you are a true national championship contender. And that's what this group of guys has thought for the last 4 years.
Yeah, it's on another level now, but I go back to it with Crames. We lost in Missoula and still made the playoffs and beat Furman. And that I thought was a big step, because that was the first playoff win we'd had for a long, long time. And so that kind of, I think, gave people the idea that, there's more beyond the Big Sky, right? There's more beyond just this awesome league. And now the expectation is so high. And I think part of that too is the league's different. You don't play everybody all the time, right? It's not every year we're going to see NAU and then Weber and then Idaho State. And then I mean, this year we didn't play in Flagstaff or, wherever. So I think you have to look beyond your conference just in the landscape of where football is. And I love that the expectation is set higher. I drove to Fargo to watch the Cats get whooped in the quarterfinal a couple years ago. Then I drove and watched them lose in the semi. And then I drove to Brookings in an ice storm and I watched the game over there. And the first year in Fargo, it was like, hey, we're here. This is awesome. And the Bison fans, they're so patronizing, right? They're like, oh, your boys tried hard. And then, the next year, it was a little closer, but we got whooped again. And you could tell the Bison fans were like, oh, you guys are getting there. You keep trying, and then they beat us in the final. And you're still sitting here going, man, what do we have to do? What do we have to do to get over the hump? I think a big game in this whole process was that game in Brookings, the regular season game, that they nearly won, that they should have won, probably, right?
Yep.
Now, that team ran out of steam. They weren't as deep as they needed to be, and they got banged up in the wrong spot, starting with that game. But they were the toughest game on SDSU's schedule that year. And it came in the second week of the season. And I heard that from South Dakota State people. And I think that game, even though the season didn't end up where it needed to be, I think attrition got a hold of them. I thought that game was a big signpost game, even though they lost on, was he in, was he not in at the end, and they didn't play well, and they still were in that game. And I thought that was the game where they were like, oh yeah, these are the games we should be playing. These are the teams we should be playing, the environments we should be playing in. And I think they've carried that forward. And I give Vegan and his staff so much credit for that, in terms of how they build a team, how they practice, how they recruit, and also their stability at quarterback, really, right? Like, the one thing you don't want to be is always looking for a drop-down quarterback every year and having to start over. I think the Grizz would tell you that, right? Like,
No doubt.
they've been searching for it, right? And they caught lightning in a bottle with McDowell last year a little bit, but I think you ask any Grizzly fan, I think they would tell you, God dang, I wish we could just plug a guy in for 3 years, or
Right.
4 years. Because look at the Final Four this year. Quarterback stability, right?
All
You got
four
maybe
were
the
all
three
four were
best
four-year starters, man.
Yeah,
All
the three best
four
quarterbacks in the league. And I've known the Bowman kid, he went to Brent Swiggert's high school in Buffalo. So I've known about him since he was in junior high. I used to call a lot of the state high school championship games here on TV. And I know he was briefly at Iowa State, but he's not a one and done guy. He's I'm a coyote guy. And so, I think that's the other big element that, that's a challenge we'll face. We'll worry about January 7th, but I think that's another big element of what they've done in terms of how they built it.
Well, this team specifically too, as McCain O'Reilly said to me about a month and a half ago, he said, "Hey, we've learned all the lessons we need to learn. We went on this crazy run in 21 when we were young guys, and then we hit a brick wall. But I mean, that's the 4-time defending national champs that we lost to, and then, from 22 losing on the ice rink in Brookings to 23, Tommy gets knocked out and they lose on a blocked extra point. Like, they've had the heartbreaks, but this day and age, that's so rare to get to the point where then you get another chance at it, because now guys just leave and there's so much attrition. And so for these guys to rally and stay and say, hey, this is us, this is our core, let's go do something special, and now to have them knocking on the door of doing something, I mean, quite honestly, historic. They'll be the winningest Big Sky team in the history of the league if they win on Monday. It's pretty cool. I think that's the sort of thing we yearn for when we cover and talk about and follow college sports, and it's becoming more and more rare.
Well, and you don't get it at FBS at all, right? It just doesn't exist anymore. And so I think this FCS sweet spot is pretty cool. And I agree with McCade. I think a big part of that is you talk about people leaving. Know who doesn't leave? Montana guys.
That's right, exactly.
Montana guys don't leave. And they easily could have said after the loss in the championship game, well, we had Superman and we didn't win because they had Troy, right? Like, you get one Troy in your life. And I think every person who's from Montana, like, would jump in front of a bus for Troy Anderson, right? He's that guy. And he was a guy who tipped the field. I mean, the biggest play of that South Dakota State semifinal, 4th and 1, Pierre Strong, NFL running back, looks like he's got a touchdown maybe, and Troy comes shooting out of a cannon and it's over and we win because we have Troy. And that group was so special in large part because of him and the guys around him. What a group. What, they had 4 NFL players on that team with Okada and McCutcheon and Hardy. I mean, and to lose that group and still be right back at that level the next year, if you're a McCade O'Reilly and you watch Callahan graduate with that group and you look around, you go, we're still good. Like, we can fill in the blanks. And, one of the weak points they had was they had some attrition at linebacker and they had to play McCade probably before they wanted to. And it paid off now because he's awesome, right? And they lose Danny Yu. People don't talk about that with this year's team. They lost Caden Dowler, Blake Schmidt, and Danny Yu. 3 starters on their defense and never hiccuped from that, which is remarkable. They lost a starter at each level of their defense and didn't have a hiccup. And that's like losing your catcher, your shortstop, and your center fielder.
No doubt.
And they didn't hiccup. So I think to take the mantle from that Troy group, and obviously Tommy took that baton in so many ways, and he's such a special kid that they've built it ascendantly. And with Montana guys don't leave. Because where are they going to go? Because that's what all of us who grew up in Montana wanted to do, was play for national championship in blue and gold, or whatever colors the Grizzlies have decided to wear at any given moment. And so you look at this group, and Tommy, obviously, I mean, quarterbacks from Montana, like Dickinson, Edwards, think about those guys, right? And then to have a 1,000-yard rusher from Montana and your most explosive receivers, a Montana guy, like with Montana was always about the linemen and the tight ends and the defensive players. Not on this team. The Lex Hilliards were few and far between. We had Cody Kirk and you had Logan Jones, but it was by and large like the mindset was we got to go elsewhere to get speed,
right,
and skill position talent. Don't have to, especially if you build offensive lines the way these teams do.
No doubt. Yeah, that part has been fascinating just to watch the way high school football in Montana has evolved. And, now you're right. I mean, some of the premier players are tiny slot receivers from Billings, Taco Dowler, Junior Bergen. That was not the case 20 years ago. You had to go find that guy in Sacramento, California or something before.
Yeah, and that's how they did it forever. Yeah. And it's funny because you look at the 84 team, and they had some Montana guys in spots you wouldn't expect them to. Like you always assumed that was always the case. But they had touchdown Kelly Davis. They went to Riverton, Wyoming to get tiny Tommy White. Joe Biggs, obviously. Tommy Mallon. I mean, they had guys in the end zone who were Montana boys. Brent Bateman, and this team has that too, and it's pretty fun.
Bobcats win again.
So, 5th quarter at the R Bar?
Dude, I could crush a burger right now.
Can you guys pick it up? I'm thirsty back here. Guys, what's up? Hop on in. 5th quarter's this way.
Oh, new R Bar merch.
Yo, what's the 5th quarter?
They have food, drinks, and giveaways after every home game.
And these sweet Bobcat cups.
Oh, I'm in.
Take me to the R Bar.
Join us at the rocking R Bar after every home game for the 5th quarter.
Let's celebrate the spirit of blue and gold.
Well, last thing for you that I guess I got 2 more things for you. Last specific about this team. Mellott, I think, he's the latest great story out of Montana. I mean, there's so many great stories. There's so many great stories on this team. There's so many great stories in this state year in and year out. But he's ascended to just this different level where he's already been one of the faces of the entire university over the last 4 years. But if and when Montana State wins this game on Monday, I mean, he goes to a whole different level, man. You're talking like rarefied air. He's like on the Mount Rushmore of Montana figures. Like he's in the same breath as guys like Dave Dickinson, honestly, if they go undefeated. So your thoughts on just a kid from Butte, America leading this charge?
I have a text somewhere on my phone from Bill Lamberty, and it was when Tommy was there his first year, I think, and then the pandemic hit, right? And I just get this random text out of the blue, and it's like, I'm sitting in my office, and I just watched a freshman from Butte, America walk by, and it just danced through my head that I might get to watch him be our quarterback. And this was before that's when he was returning kicks, and he was on punt cover, and I still got the Tommy football number 16 t-shirt that I wear. And then that obviously has come true. Now, I'm the same age as Dave Dickinson. When I was a sophomore, because we didn't play the Great Falls schools as freshmen, they didn't leave town. We go up there, I'm playing sophomore basketball. I'm getting lit up. I get benched. They're like, why don't you stop that guy? Then later that night, he gets like 20 in the varsity game. I'm like, well, nobody can stop that guy, right? So, and you know how Montana is. They say, oh, you're from Montana. What year are you? Oh, I'm Dave Dickinson's year. Right. Scott Hattler's year. That's how you describe it to people when you meet them when you're not in Montana. So the Dave thing was unbelievable, as hard as it was to watch from our side. And I do think Tommy, I know Grizzly fans will set the internet on fire pointing out statistics that this isn't true. But if Tommy goes undefeated, finishes it, he's there, right? Like, as far as Montana quarterbacks, Brock Osweiler does the game. One of my best friends, Dave Fleming, works with him, and we go back and forth all the time. And he's the rare Montana high school who quarterbacked in the NFL. Leaf would be the other guy, but they left, right? They weren't ever really in the mix to stay at home. And I think because of what these two schools mean to our state, you can make the argument that those two guys are the two most influential football figures in the history of our state. And win Butte, win the state, right? That's what they always say. And Tommy, and the fact that both of those guys, great students, great in the community, like there's no black marks, right? And so as hard as it is for me to to say, I mean, Dave was everything you wanted in a college football player and the guy to cheer for. And Tommy's the same dude. Now it'll be interesting because Monday, I live in the Midwest, and I'll walk out my door and someone will fight me to tell me how much better Cam Miller is than Tommy Mellott. They don't want to hear it, but I'll ride with Tommy. And I guess it is fitting that they're the two best players in FCS, and they get to play each other, and I think that's great.
And then that's the last question. Then, what's your thoughts just on this actual matchup of a game? Because I think that's the most awesome part. Is both teams, I think, are ready for the moment. There's not the narrative of, one team's been here, the other one's, kind of finding their footing. So I think both teams are going to show up ready to play in the spotlight. They're both good on both the lines. They're both salty on defense, well coached, all that sort of stuff. So in my opinion, I think it's going to come down to which quarterback plays better. What do you think of just the matchup on Monday night between Montana State and North Dakota State?
Yeah, and I think obviously I do think they're the two best players in the country, and I'll side with Tommy. I think he's electric, right? He's a difference-making player. And Cam Miller's he's really, really good. But I think Tommy's a special guy. I do think there are more similarities than differences. I mean, look at what are they top two in the Jerry Rice Award. They're going to be top two in the Peyton Award. From these two teams, the lines are the same. I think the idea, NDSU having been there, done that, they have, obviously, and they kicked our teeth in a couple of years ago. But they've been the little brother the last 2 years around here. Right? They haven't been the dominant program the last couple of years. And so I think they do have something to prove a little bit too. I don't think there's any idea that they're going to rest on their laurels. I do think there is a feeling in the Midwest and in the Missouri Valley Football Conference that the Big Sky Conference is still a fancy pants, throw it around, has been league. I just think they believe that. And until someone beats them, they have the right to believe that. I think this is the best Montana State University football team that there's ever been. And I think, what was Sonny Holland, right? This is the place, and now is the time. And then if this team can't get it done, you're going to be going, really? Like, we had it all. So I really hope they do. I can't say they're going to win because we don't know. I think they're two really, really, really good teams. But I think this is the best team to ever put blue and gold on. And I think they've got every chance to write themselves into the history books as one of the best and most dominant Big Sky Conference football teams ever in the history of the league. And I don't want to hear about watered down FCS teams moving up to, I don't want to hear about it because they went out and they beat New Mexico. And everyone said, they didn't have a hard schedule. And then New Mexico's quarterback is getting big bucks and the running back's going to USC and they played in a bowl game. So guess what? They beat a pretty good team and they beat a lot of good teams along the way. And I just think that this is our time, and it's time to get it done. And they got the right coach, they got the right coaching staff. What a gift it would be for Wadad on the way out, right? Like, here we go. And obviously, put Tommy's statue right next to Sonny's.
That's the best part. Is
well, you know what, the statue they'll probably put it next to Our Lady of the Rockies, right? We get a number 4 jersey on that.
I'll send you the picture when we get done. We have this picture of Mellott holding his arms out like this after scoring a touchdown against, I guess it was in the quarters, and he looks like he's floating. And I was like, dude, we should literally put that on a print and put it next to the Lady on the Rockies. Like that's where that belongs.
I did when he was a freshman. I had my daughter help me because I can't. I photoshopped a 16 onto the Lady of the Rockies and sent it to some people. And that's probably where a statue belongs, right? Like that's where it should be. And I will say this as a Twins broadcaster, every year we have a day that's South Dakota State Day or North Dakota State Day. We do it for the other schools too, but for the last however many years, it's they bring the trophy and the football team comes out and they throw out the first pitch and they're all giant with big beards and 8 rings on their fingers. I am tired of that. I don't want to see them. I don't want to see the trophy. I do not want to see that trophy at Target Field again. I think it's time for Brent Vegan to bring the trophy out here as a Twins fan, put on a Buxton jersey as the guy from Buxton, North Dakota, and let him throw out the first pitch.
Well, it would certainly be a storybook for a variety of different reasons, from Tommy Mellott's roots in Butte to Juana Cruzado in her last year to championship 40 years in the making if Montana State can get it done. Kris, we appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much for being here, and great talking to you.
Yeah, I appreciate being included. You've covered this thing top to bottom, and it's awesome, and it's just a great time to celebrate being a Bobcat.
Will you marry me in your future? Or maybe you do it all over again. Hi, I'm Brian Toon with Jewelry Design Center, inviting you to come see the largest selection of Will You Marry Me in the state of Montana. The brightest diamonds of every shape and size, unique settings built to last, and skilled jewelers on site offering free sizing and maintenance for life, because that's how long we want to be your jeweler. Jewelry Design Center in Missoula, on Brooks, across from the Montana Club.